My daughter just put people.
It just turned into.
Or did they leave Thursday? Maybe it might be. Second, my goal is to put down people. Would you be okay with it? Like we can talk about 50. And those people did not, there was not mutual interest, but beyond one, and she ended up with just 2 kids, just for that one part. So that was, I thought, well, that worked out.
So I went into podcast.
Oh my goodness.
Leave those in here.
I'm a Timex watch, buddy.
Take some licking.
Keep it on ticking.
Thank you very much. It's far too long. You've got 3 green lights, you got the camera going. So it should.
Tempting, here you go.
Where did I?
I'm gonna be right behind you, sorry, you guys. Do you need sugar right now?
I wouldn't even know what they look like. It's all in very nice cursive.
What did I do? What's your name? So
You tried the hard reboot?
Correct.
Hey, it's back on. My outside contractor said it's back on.
We have information.
My IT skills here.
Hot mic, people, hot mic.
we put it back.
We don't need it up
The,
here. We're all in the room.
amendment agreement. Yep.
During public comment, what the commenter who, the attorney who gets the
I know, I like this one. Have like, oh.
They're right behind you in the road. You see them?
Where did these?
Just go right behind him.
Cookies come from Commissioner Rapp. Thank you, Commissioner Rapp.
You did that?
She did.
Oh, that was very
And
kind.
ginger cookies.
Those were from the church bake sale. I thought that was explosive. I really enjoyed those. It's
Wow.
fun to have holiday treats. It is our last meeting of the year.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, kind benefactor.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. May I have a motion to resume the meeting from the recess? The December 14th, 2023 meeting from the recess. Working or not working?
We're up and running.
Okay. May I have a motion to resume the December 14th, 2023 meeting at 8:41?
So moved. Second.
Eric, second. James? Can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Hemmings,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Root.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Lesson.
Yes.
Commissioner Proto.
Yes.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, so we just finished hearing James Hemmings. Would you like to summarize your points, since I think most of them were lost in the
Yeah,
interval?
I'll summarize quickly and then
Excellent.
just conclude. I wanted to thank everybody involved in the process of negotiating this agreement, moving the ball forward. There are still some significant hurdles from my perspective to overcome. One, the role of the arbiter. Two, the existence of liquidated damages. Three, the term. Four, the restrictive covenant. But I will also say this. I'm not reflexively against working with Mr. Shvia. I think having somebody with his philanthropic track record in our community is wonderful. And I think his discussion along these lines in connection with this agreement has been in furtherance of that. There are issues that I have with the way that the agreement is constructed and some of the requirements that are in the agreement. And perhaps we can get over that hurdle. Perhaps we can't, from my perspective, get over that hurdle. But that's where I stand. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much for summarizing. Jeff?
So one question I had, and I think it's already touched on by James, was the restrictive covenant, why it would go into place after the first payment. So I think you had already noted that. I wasn't sure why it was constructed that way, what sense that makes, considering the project's certainly just begun at that point. Anything could happen at that point to derail the project, and why would we have the covenant in place if something happens where we would have to pull back? I think it makes more sense to do it after the project's done, we receive everything.
So to clarify, the provision that describes when it would be recorded is paragraph 6A on page 3 of the restrictive covenant, where it says promptly after the donor's payment of the first installment of the restricted donation, the restrictive covenant shall be recorded against the title to Centennial Park. It was decided to be recorded after the first installment because that's when he's $1 million in. It's not an insignificant amount of money. And that means we've started construction, and presumably we're going to build what we say we're going to build. But
He's agreed to the design.
And he's agreed that the design meets his goals after the regulatory review.
We also have the right to pull out after that and give him his money back, right?
Correct.
So then wouldn't the restrictive covenant still be in place?
If the agreement, if we give the money back and the agreement goes away, then we would look for releasing the covenant. We would take action to remove the covenant from the property because he wouldn't have any money at stake.
You would have no consideration.
Yeah, he'd have no consideration for it.
I guess, do we need to speak to that specifically to give us a pathway of doing so?
We can be more explicit.
Yeah.
Okay, I have just one thing to ask of everyone. We asked for some education efforts in regard to the donation landscape from larger institutions than ourselves. And we asked for some letters of recommendation, particularly from regarding this donor and his experience. And those were turned around in 24 hours. And so I think that I was grateful for that additional work. I was grateful for that landscape being identified in such a thorough and complete fashion. And I hope everyone has had a chance to read them because I think that they are donations, multi-level donations, none involving an escrow and none involving a guarantee. So I hope that those questions were quashed.
I just want to add
Yes.
some context. It's not my decision whether you guys want to allow for a restrictive covenant or not. Certainly there's alternative ways for the donor to enforce our promises against us. I just want to add some context. Under current regulations, if the Park District accepts a grant from the federal government or the state of Illinois, they currently require us to record a permanent restrictive covenant against the property to confirm that the property will always remain and be used in the way that the grant supports. So if it's a property acquisition grant, it's a covenant requiring us always to own the land. If it's a property development grant, It's a covenant saying that the improvements will continue to be maintained until or unless the agency supervising the grant releases it. And so, in the context of park districts receiving grants or gifts for capital improvements, it is not uncommon for there to be restrictive covenants requiring the proceeds, the use of the proceeds to be enforced and continued. You have a question?
I do. Doesn't that go back to though, we had a letter just talking about the restrictive covenants and easements being with a government entity versus a private entity. So the government requires them, and the term is what, 25 years?
I'm looking at one for the federal government for land and water conservation, and there's no term. It's just indefinite.
So that's like a conservation easement.
No, this was a grant to facilitate the, actually, beach redevelopment for
Okay.
another one of our clients.
Okay, that to me makes sense because it's public remaining public, whereas this is private overtaking public.
There's no risk that we will lose title to this property. As a result of this restrictive covenant, there is no reverter clause, there's no title conversion. It is simply a promise for us to leave in place the things that are being paid for. I'm not making a value judgment, I'm just telling you, it's a promise to leave in place the things that are being built. So, by comparison to if the park district received an OSLED grant, or a land and water conservation grant, or any equivalent to that, under current regulations, it's very likely we would be required to file a covenant on the property benefited by the grant. That's just the context I want to give you.
What is the additional level of protection that a restrictive covenant on the deed adds, as opposed to simply the language in the contract identifying the elements as being the condition, the maintenance of the elements as being the condition?
Where a covenant is recorded against property and there's a beneficiary identified, the covenant cannot be released unilaterally without the beneficiary's consent unless it expires by its own terms. And so it gives the beneficiary a little bit more enforcement power and the ability to hold the park district in this case to its promise.
But there are remedies available.
There are
in this
contract remedies
contract.
otherwise. Yeah, there are
Yes.
still contract remedies, yes.
Correct. So there are existing remedies available to supply some of this protection. This simply adds an additional layer of protection, and this is the only vehicle to attach these to perfect this restrictive covenant.
In order to perfect a restrictive covenant, it has to be recorded.
Correct.
Like Commissioner
That's
Hemming
what I
said,
understood.
there's always just litigation,
Correct.
breach of contract.
Okay. All right. I saw a couple hands up over here. Yes.
2 points. One, it does not affect, as you said, title in a fashion, and yet it affects control. And I continue to question whether we as a park district can lawfully give up control of Centennial Park for such an extended period of time, 50 years. What is, just an aside, what is ironic is that at the State of the Villages the league presented last week, Patrick Brennan, who is village manager for Kenilworth, announced that the village of Kenilworth has received a grant from the IEPA for $500,000 to help them start construction of their beach construction project. To my knowledge, and please correct me, we have not gone out and sought a grant for any of this Elder Centennial project.
You have to have an approved plan from the regulatory agencies to advance a grant application.
Correct.
Right now, we have an approved plan, but it has not been submitted to the regulatory agencies and consequently not approved.
Then perhaps all of this is not timely. I look at this and I go, my goodness, we aren't through even the village preliminary regulatory process. And here we are talking about inking a deal where we're putting a restrictive covenant on Centennial Park for 50 years. and we're not even looking at what public money may be available. We may not, realistically, we may not need this money.
We do have off-ramps in this deal. We do have off-ramps in this deal.
Why would we, why don't we?
We do have off-ramps in this deal. If we decide that it doesn't suit us, or we don't want to construct these elements, we don't have to construct these elements, and this agreement doesn't become valid.
Well, I guess we have another offer that came in surprisingly.
So let's turn our attention to that offer.
Why don't
because
we-
I have-
Can let's
yes.
let everybody comment?
Yes, sure,
Can we go around?
Yeah. yeah.
My comments are brief. Jeff, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry,
Christine and I have been having all the conversations, and there's been a lot. The one misnomer that I just want to correct, through no fault of anyone, we continue to refer to it as a negotiation team. I would just like, for the record, to reflect, we received an initial agreement, and we just started highlighting what was wrong with it, right? And to his credit, Mr. Ishbia was incredibly responsive, amenable, so far, to nearly everything we've asked for. Right? It started with naming rights, it's gone down a lot further. And so it's not a negotiation. I do believe we can take it or leave it. It's okay. And if we arrive at a point where we don't find the agreement terms to be in our favor or that we like, we can walk away from it. It's okay. That's okay. So I just wanted to reiterate that point.
My only final comment with regard to this is that listening carefully to all of the comments on November 30th, all of those comments were reflected in, and the subsequent conversations were reflected in, but the comments were reflected in with force, as I understood them to be presented in the meeting. I believe that our donor was listening to that meeting very carefully and wanted to hear from us that in fact, these are very serious issues. These issues need to be addressed, and I do believe that the adjustments and the movement represent a willingness to come to an agreement. So I feel like I have enough information. I feel like I have enough off-ramps. I feel like I understand this project well enough. I am not in no way, shape, or form an expert, but I have extreme faith in John Peterson. He and I do not always agree. However, I do trust him completely to look out for our best interests in this process, and that's why I was surprised by the choice, because he is very clearly on our side, but I thought that was a good choice for us.
To your point, I was asked.
You were asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were asked. So, so in any case, those are my reasons for supporting it.
May I ask who asked you to serve as arbiter?
Justin Ishbia.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So, we can move the discussion now to this donation agreement and do a little compare and contrast if you like.
Can
Yes.
you just
Yes.
summarize the point, like the legal points that, because I think it would be like useful for Adam to prepare a summary responding to those. Because in your perspective, you
Yeah.
believe that the village overlay district will enable the public to walk on what I would consider the private beach area.
Right.
So I would like an opinion on that from someone who is knowledgeable in zoning and things, because I don't see it.
Right.
And so I think there were a couple others.
The other point about the donor not being able to move the elements either, I think is important to you.
Establishment of the dog beach, location of the fence are
That
two
he can't
provisions
move, we
that
can't
are
move them, he
jointly
can't
committed
move
to.
them, even if the swap happens.
Right, it's not changing.
I know.
No, I think that was, you
But
want
your
clarification, you
exhibit-
want that opinion, you want that.
Yeah, no, I
Your
want it
assumption
laid
that
out.
the
Yeah,
fence
that's
is gonna
okay.
shift is not supported by the restrictive covenant. The restrictive covenant requires the fence and the use of that dog beach to remain as is.
I'm worried about the fence not shifting because it blocks public access. That's what
Right.
I'm worried about.
Right, so you'd look like
I
Adam
would
to
like
clarify
Adam
that.
just to
Yeah,
explain to me
That's
how
fine.
public access is preserved
correct,
under this approach.
okay.
I think there were a couple other points. I mean, I think it would be helpful to have a, official statement on there is no, like, there's a problem potentially with optics, but that there's no legal conflict of interest with the selection of the arbiter.
Okay.
I think Colleen's point about title versus control, and can we lawfully give up control, is also a good point to
I would
understand.
respectfully, I would characterize that as a political difference, not a legal difference.
Okay,
So that's something for you guys to debate, but the Park District will remain in charge of the property. And it's simply whether or not it wants to comply with the promise it makes, or it doesn't make the promise. That's the choice you guys have, you're the officials. But the Park District will remain the owner and will remain in charge of what activities go on there, save for the fact that the dog beach has to remain in place, and the fence has to remain there, and the ADA pathway has to go there. But there's no limitation on what happens on the tableland, there's no limitation on what happens north of the dog beach. So how you want to characterize it is a political characterization, not a legal characterization.
okay, the other point is just, the 1023. It's nice that we have these donation letters, were they individual donations, or were they through a different foundation? I think there's a difference, because it looks like for our donation, there's been an intent to create a special vehicle for that. So I still think it's appropriate to do our due diligence on the special vehicle that's been created for our donation, which probably was not the case for these other donations. And, understanding the reason and rationale for that, I hope will be forthcoming from these documents. And then, were there any other specific?
I think you did it.
Okay.
Is that request, and Adam's writing that down, but in this letter, it says that they're willing to provide financial references. If this donor provides financial references, is that sufficient for you? It puts them on a parallel footing with this proposed
Here's the thing,
donation.
though, with this donor, we're in the position where we were with Orchard 2020 when we didn't know who it was for the first 8 months, right? So, we know more about one donor than the other,
Correct.
so.
But my question is, you're asking specifically about finances. The stipulation here in this agreement is that they will provide references.
But they're not
Just-
running through a special foundation they
We don't know
created for the
anything. We don't know
express
anything
purpose.
about it.
Nothing.
We don't know anything about
We
it.
don't know anything.
Right.
We know
So
one
my-
has been created,
Right,
though,
so my-
and we should be able to get the 1023.
Right, or you should be able to get references that state that if that is not 100% funded for this, there are sources of funding that are not encumbered that can be used.
Yes, but I still think we should get the 1023. I mean, it is a document that must be made available to the public. Okay.
Anything else? Anything else that anyone else wants to revisit or get documented? Warren, did you have your hand up?
No, it's just
Okay.
scratching my head.
Understand.
Just want to
Yes.
continue, the Form 1023, from the vice president of which has failed to perform a contract. I think that's a huge distinction, and it
What
is
do you mean?
something, we have a property exchange agreement
Oh,
that,
okay.
that has yet to be.
Okay,
It's tied up in litigation.
yeah.
Well,
That's
the litigation would go away.
still tied up in litigation. Okay.
Why do you laugh?
Oh, no.
Why do you laugh? It's tied up in
yeah,
litigation.
Yeah, no, that's
But there were
okay.
2
Really,
years
why-
to perform
why
before it was
do you
tied up
laugh?
in
Yeah.
litigation, so.
Okay.
Because he had 2 years to perform a contract
Okay.
before that lawsuit was filed.
Does anybody else have anything else that
No,
they'd
I-
like
But you
clarified?
can't close now, agreed?
Correct.
We have stipulated not to close.
Okay.
As a part of the ongoing litigation, is that correct?
It's 9:00, so I would
It
really
is
like to.
correct.
I'd really like to move to the second
It
agreement.
is correct,
that
so
we
there's
all
an
just-
improper inference,
Okay,
or, yeah, there's an
Okay.
implication.
okay. I'd like to move to the second agreement for a brief discussion, if no one has any objections. Is that fair? Okay. I have 4 main points. The first point is the consideration is different. The value of the swap to us is non-trivial.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on,
Yeah.
let's just gotta
Yeah.
do a swap.
Wait.
We don't, so let me, do you mind if I just?
No, go
What
ahead.
he should-
Yeah, that's.
You go ahead.
On
You-
Monday,
you brought us
on
this.
Monday, I received a call from Mr. Ronoff, indicating that he had an anonymous donor who would like to give us $3 million. And what's not reflected in this letter, but what was reflected in the phone call, is that there may be conditions associated with that $3 million. The conditions that Mr. Romanoff presented on the phone, which I don't know if they are still in existence, maybe they've thought them
Correct.
through, we don't know. It doesn't say that in this letter, we should ask the question. The conditions that were put in front of me were, one, that we drop the discussion of a donation agreement with Mr. Ishbia. Two, that we drop the land swap agreement with Mr. Ishbia. And three, that Mr. Ishbia have no naming rights over anything. And so those were the three conditions that Mr. Romanoff stated on the phone were attendant to this particular donation. Now, none of those things were raised this evening by Ms. O'Brien when she was here today. There's none of that in this letter. There may be an implication in the third sentence of this letter that there is perhaps a condition on the donation agreement, but we don't know about anything else, right? And so I hear what you're saying, right? We can certainly talk about the conditions that were presented over the phone. I don't know if they're still existing.
Right.
Based on this letter.
Two of those conditions were articulated in public comment tonight.
Two of those conditions were
Not by-
articulated by Irene
A citizen,
Smith.
correct.
So I don't know.
So it should be assumed that this donation is widely known by,
No, Mr. James, I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I don't think
No?
you can make any assumptions, but my
well,
question,
how would Irene Smith know about it?
She may have talked with somebody on the board.
Okay.
But it's this is not privileged information.
no.
So this is all
Is-
information that was going to be expressed in open session anyway.
Yeah,
So frankly, the harm in that disclosure to me is not existent. So, and nor is it productive to litigate here.
correct.
I think that the way that we ought to go forward is to have a conversation, pardon me for interrupting you, Ribbon.
Not at all.
Is
Not
to
at all.
ask the question of Mr. Romanoff, when we talk about unrestricted anonymous gifts, are there any continuing conditions like the ones that we had on the phone when I talked with him last Monday? What are they? Let's have a conversation about those before we start to comment on the legitimacies of those conditions, et cetera, right? That's where I think we ought to
Okay.
go.
The only other condition that I have heard but do not know, that I would specifically want to know, is if there is a you must terminate the swap on the condition that you terminate the swap. If we are involved in a lawsuit as a function of terminating that swap, can we get an indemnification? Because that would be important to me. So those conditions are important to me, and the fact that it was initially identified as not being, as having a condition forcing us, not forcing, but requiring us to drop back or cancel the swap, means to me that the consideration of the swap needs to be included together with the value of the gift. Because the consideration of the swap to us is meaningful. Canceling that swap is very meaningful to us. It is at least 6.2 million minus some diminished value of the parcel, which now cannot be developed and cannot be consolidated, plus the 3 million. It is at least that number. So, and that number is at least, to me, between 7 and 9. Because I think the value of that parcel is not 0, but it's much less than when we started and entered into that swap, this swap. And those conditions put us in a very similar situation where we also have strings. That's my concern.
Understood.
Yeah,
I think-
and they may not exist, and that's great. And thank you for bringing it to me at 5. My other question would be, it came to us between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. on Monday. There is an opportunity to get it documented, to get it into the agenda, to get it on the calendar, and have a proper discussion with more background. And I realize that we have been negotiating this particular agreement since September. We know a lot about this counterparty, and we have a lot of details about this agreement. And I feel like this is a very welcome donation offer but I'm concerned that it may turn out to be as thorny for us. That's my concern.
I think it's fair. Just so everybody understands in the public, when I received this call, I talked to every single one of the commissioners individually and let them know that I got the call. So we've had this discussion.
Correct.
You and I share that concern.
Yeah.
But it may not be a real concern. We need to ask the question, right?
Correct.
So, right,
Correct.
yeah.
It would have been super helpful if it had been, and I realize everybody's willing to work till midnight, and God bless them all. It really would have been helpful to have a little bit more of an agreement to compare.
And let me add.
Before we stop on anything else, because it's causing us to stop on something else.
Well, agreed. So let me add also, to that end, after I spoke with all the commissioners, I had a follow-up discussion with Mr. Romanoff, who informed me that somebody would be bringing a term sheet this evening. This is not a term sheet.
No.
And so it would have been helpful to have a term sheet for at least this part of the discussion.
Correct.
Right? And so I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes.
I am very confused why we are talking about the property exchange agreement and the value of 261 Sheridan while we are evaluating a contribution that when David Williams came on September 7th, he said was totally unrelated to, had no bearing on property exchange. And I'm also confused as to why you seem to be so afraid of Mr. Ishbia suing the Park District over an agreement that has not been performed for 3 years, where we have yet to have a legal opinion, to the best of my knowledge, as to what the risk is, as to whether the agreement exists or whether it has lapsed. I'm confused by this.
That's okay. So let me clarify. The donor, the original donor, the IFF donor, is our neighbor on 3 fronts, and
Yes.
consequently has to agree to all of our plans.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
We're
he has
a
to.
public entity. No.
Has to agree to our plans.
And we have
We
the
need to get
tool-
letters of consent from 4 entities. He is 3 of them. That's number 1. Number 2, he controls the asset, which is involved in the swap. And number 3, he is our neighbor to the south. It is not, he is just as important as our neighbor to the north, just as important as our neighbors at Lloyd, just as important as our neighbors at Maple, just as important as our neighbors at Tower. These are all equally important people that we have to go forward and work with in partnership on issues like sand replenishment, erosion, dredging. Going forward, we need to have a good working relationship with these people. And I'm not afraid of getting sued by him. We've already been sued by our own citizens. It becomes a little less scary the first time you go through it, after the first time you go through it. But I do want to articulate that he has a different standing because of his status as a neighbor on 3 sides of a 4-sided project.
And you know what we have? We're the government, we have the power of eminent domain that nobody wants to look at, that nobody wants to talk about. And instead, we have spent so much money and so much of our time and our community's time. And I wish for once that we would recognize that the people that come here continually and pour out their souls, please don't do this, please don't do this. I wish we respected them as much as we seem to respect our quote-unquote neighbors who are riparian owners by our parks. I think we owe every resident here an equal duty of concern and respect.
So to that end, we've had a number of emails. And the email tally is, I'm going to ask John to report the email tally because he's been keeping track of who's in favor and who's against. The people that are able to show up, it's very important, that's very powerful. Public comment is only taken in person, but we do consider emails that are presented from people who sign their names and state their opinions as well. Those are also authentic conversations. Those are also important conversations.
And Madam President, in these letters that have come, have we also identified those who are in favor, who are either employees of Shore Capital or who have business relationships with Justin Ishbia? Because the letters that I have seen in emails, the majority of them I can tie back to either being employed by Shore or having a business relationship in some capacity with an Ishbia company.
So the fact that you've done research on people who send you public opinion matters into your email at the Park District is different from the way I would handle it. But I would say, are they residents of Illinois?
They are
Because these are
entitled to their
assets,
opinion.
they are assets of the state of Illinois.
May I also point out that if you look at the opposition to these proposed plans, is highly concentrated in the immediate vicinity of Elder and Centennial Parks. And this is not uncommon. This is basic NIMBY opposition to change. We see it everywhere. I've been in the business of real estate development for 36 years, going on 37 years. I've been in this arena many times. The most ardent opposition comes from the immediate neighbors. Here we have a neighbor who is actually endorsing the plan that's been approved by the Park District, but we have neighbors that continue to oppose based upon the desire to see no change. Now, we as a board, we voted in 2020 to proceed with the property exchange agreement. Because from a real estate perspective, it makes eminent sense. Because we knew there was a failed referendum in the early 2000s to buy it for $3 million. It failed.
There was never a referendum,
There were-
Mr. James. It was a survey. That
It was on the ballot. It was on the
I believe
ballot.
you're incorrect.
I believe you're incorrect. I lived here then. Okay?
John wants
So,
to state
I'm-
figures whenever you're ready.
I'm going to suggest that not just this board, but the prior board and the board before that all have endorsed. And going back to 2012 with the adoption of the strategic plan, in 2016, the adoption of the Lakefront Master Plan. When you came on the board, you were selected to serve by Randy Whitchurch. I was interviewed by Randy Whitchurch. Half the comments were about the dog beach.
Point of order here.
When,
Point of
Colleen, I am
order.
suggesting, you have told us that you represent your neighborhood.
Point of
And
order.
yet, our bylaws suggest that you represent everyone equally. You have told us that you are going to continue to resist, and yet you voted unanimously to relocate or maintain the dog beach at the south end. We have passed the board, and yet you continue to relitigate decisions previously adopted by this board. You are the only one that didn't, you had the boldness to read directly from a text message to impugn John Peterson, yet you were the only commissioner that failed and refused to submit your handwritten notes and your text
That is not
messages.
true.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Let the record
Excuse
reflect.
me.
All right.
Point of order,
Yes, it
point
is.
of order, point
Point
of
of
order.
order.
Commissioner
No, no, no.
Root, you
Stop,
have made.
Stop,
Point.
stop. We're gonna stop right now.
No, we're
All
not.
right.
Yes, we
Because
are.
he has-
No.
The item on
You have
the
impugned
item on
the
the
character
floor,
of Costa,
The item-
of John.
the item on the floor is the alternative donation.
Correct.
That may be,
We are
but
not,
this man
we are
has
not
made
relitigating the
statements.
plans.
Yes.
This man has made statements that are untrue.
Many of these people at this table have made statements that are untrue. And this is not the night where we will address all of them. That is not a productive exercise or a productive use of our time.
Madam President, may I suggest that what we do is right now determine as a board who would be appropriate to sit down as as two commissioners to work and further explore Mr. Romanov's letter here, whether it is a real contribution offer, whether it is not, whether it has conditions, whether it does not. And I would like to make a motion that Mr. Hemmings and Commissioner Rapp serve in that capacity to sit down and further vet what has been offered here, if these two commissioners are so predisposed to do that. And if there's a second.
Just a point of order for Adam.
Yes.
If we could make a motion, I think, can we straw poll to just determine
We can do a straw poll. We can't take any fight.
Sorry.
We're not approving the agreement.
We're not approving an action or final action.
All we're doing is trying to move forward to
All we're
further
doing
explore
is
this.
I do
designating-
want John did gather information about people that have opined, and I do want him to be able to present that. It'll take 5 seconds. Go ahead, John.
In favor of the donation and the Elder Lane and Centennial Beach project, 18 emails. In favor of the donation without any mention for or against the Elder Lane and Centennial Beach project, 3 people. In favor of the Elder Lane and Centennial Beach project without any mention of the donation, 3. Neither in favor of the donation nor in favor of Elder Lane or the Centennial Beach project, 2. And requesting a pause in the process until Executive Director Shannon Nazal is official in the Executive Director seat, 1.
Okay. So we have, so that's a summary of people. We've had people speak here. John has collected this information. We've had this information now represented. We're going to be choosing people to the negotiating team. Go ahead.
I thought I saw more than one requesting a pause.
Yeah,
I feel like
there
there were at
were
least
two.
I
three.
think there are 2, but all I
Okay.
could find was 1, so.
Okay. John is not copied on all the emails,
Okay.
just so you know.
Okay,
I
okay.
try and forward him all the emails that I get, but John is not copied on
Okay.
every email. I try and
Wow.
spare, I try and spare his inbox. I would be grateful if James Hemmings, who has a connection to this donor, would be on the negotiating team. And I would ask Warren to be on the negotiating team with James because of his subject matter expertise and his knowledge of the existing agreements. That would be my pairing, so I would say, I think we should identify one person first, and that would be James Hemmings. Can I have a show of hands as to who would support James Hemmings being on the negotiating team?
I'll abstain.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Too late.
5, 6. Okay, let the record show that 6 people have supported James Hemmings being on the information requesting team for this donation.
I don't want to be involved in these negotiations.
You don't.
No, I think it should be you. You're the president.
I was going to make a similar suggestion to ensure continuity. I think we should
Yeah.
at least have one person from the prior
Yeah.
Okay.
team.
Okay,
I think it should be you or Eric.
okay.
You're the
So-
leadership.
Okay. Anyone who thinks it should be me, raise your hand. Okay, 3, 4. Okay, that's 4. Okay, that's
You've got a lot of spare time.
James and I are the
There
dream
you go.
team. I'm happy to work with James. Okay.
I was just trying to spare Eric. Nothing sure happened.
I was
got a lot to do.
trying to
Got the
encourage
initial
Eric
phone call.
during the
It's
break.
good.
I was trying, okay. So Christina Cotto and James Hemmings will work together with this donor to solicit additional information.
Thank you,
Not at all.
thank you.
Thank
I'm happy
you.
to serve as an alternate.
Excellent, you'll be an alternate in the event that I'm unable to fulfill my responsibilities. Thank you very much. Okay. We have a path to go forward on this donation agreement. The Ishbia Family Foundation agreement has been tabled. Is there any willingness to reconsider the Ishbia Family Foundation following our discussion and clarification of points? Because this donation may be available in addition. We don't know if those conditions are still attached. Just asking, boldly asking, now that we have clarification, we are gathered together, we have heard some clarifying information, I would like to make a motion to consider the Ishbia Family Foundation.
I think I have a pretty clear understanding of what James Hemmings' objections are to the current draft of the agreement. Not as clear, Jeff, can you articulate what specific provisions are the stumbling blocks, if any?
My concern that I was putting out there, I'm not saying it's a complete objection, my concern and question was regarding the restricted covenant and the timing of when that would be filed, if that's the correct term. I didn't understand why, it seems like we're opening ourselves up to risk, additional risk by doing it after the initial payment rather than the completion of the project.
Okay.
So, may I have a motion to approve the restricted donation agreement between the Winnetka Park District and the Ishbia Family Foundation, Inc. for the Centennial Park Improvement Plan?
Don't you?
No, it was tabled.
No, it's tabled.
It was tabled.
So, can I open it up to be reconsidered?
So
No, I
the
think-
motion would be to remove it from the table,
Oh,
or
Sorry.
or a motion for it to consider it at a date, specific time.
okay.
So
I'd
you're
like
doing
to,
Before you make that
yes,
motion,
She
Yes.
can't make the motion, that's what
I'm
I'm.
sorry, before we move forward,
yes.
my tipping point is getting more information on this.
Okay.
And if we find out, hypothetically, this is going in the wrong direction, I am very willing to go back to our original discussion. But this is what's giving me pause currently, right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's giving me pause.
Yeah.
So perhaps the motion would be to remove the HB Family Foundation agreement from the table for consideration at the regular park board meeting in January.
That's a January 18th,
Mhm.
2024.
18.
May I have a motion to remove the Ishbia Family Foundation from its tabled state for reconsideration on January 18th, 2024?
Do we have discussion? I'll second that.
Okay.
Can the
Discussion.
president make a motion like that? I thought that they were prohibited from making a motion.
Not in a board where there's not a directly elected executive.
Discussion.
I would like to present back to the Ishpia Family Foundation the comments here in written form so that they can take them under consideration and perhaps give further thought to any other modifications, such as the timing of the donation, or some of the other conditions that Commissioner Hemmings suggested.
So I would presume that there's going to be discussions, right, and there may be further revisions. I don't have an issue with taking it off the table for the purposes of discussing it at the next
Okay.
board meeting. By that time, hopefully
We
we
will
have
have
further
information,
information
yes,
on this,
that's
and we can
exactly.
also discuss this in conjunction with.
Great. That's exactly what I was, okay.
My only comment is that when it comes back for consideration, it is dusted and, you know, like we have adequate time to review. Like we cannot have a document that it's like, oh, we've approved it, and then the attorneys go back and do things to it without coming back to the board. I feel very strongly about that.
So what's your minimum required notice period? Because usually it's the Tuesday before, and that's what our greatest effort was expended to
That's to
achieve.
the, that's to the
So that's the
Yeah.
public.
That's the public, no, but also to the board, I think.
No, I
Well-
expect to have it Friday in nearly final form. Ideally,
that was
starting
our-
the review, you know, a couple weeks before.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see other boards operating in, you know, the mess that we are with. Oh my God, I just got the document. Oh, we're still discussing it. Oh, we're, like, when they approve documents, they are close to final form. And the village, you know, for ordinances has the, you know, first vote and then the second vote.
They waive the first reading.
Sometimes, but sometimes they
Yeah.
don't. And I think for a
They-
$3 million
they-
thing,
yeah.
that might be a good practice for us so that we make sure
Okay.
that we have things
Yeah.
buttoned up.
Any other
We'll
discussion?
start the conversation as soon as possible.
Yeah. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a question, and it's on the property description. How have we arrived at the property description that is in the exhibit in the restrictive covenant?
Title company.
And is that information available? Because I know Tom Keogh has been working, I didn't know if he has added to this or not. I'm just kind of curious. It would be nice also to have a plaque that shows what we're talking about.
The legal description comes from the title company.
Okay.
So that,
Okay, we did a title opinion on Centennial, as I recall, back in 2020, is that correct, Mr.
I'd have to look to
Peterson?
see.
That's what I recall. I can pull the title company, I'll pull the 2020 and compare.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner,
Does anyone need a refresh of the motion on the table?
Yes, please.
Okay. We are taking the Ishbia, the motion on the table that has been seconded and discussed is to move the Ishbia Family Foundation donation agreement off the table onto the agenda for reconsideration January 18th, 2024.
So, but can Christina make that motion?
yes.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded. We've discussed. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hemmings,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
No.
Commissioner Root,
No.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lesson,
Yes.
Commissioner Koto,
Yes.
that motion passes.
Item 8.7, discussion of commissioner request spreadsheet.
Excellent. Okay, has everyone looked at it? Has anyone looked at it?
No, I've invited
Don't worry,
everyone to look at it.
Don't worry, I have a not perfectly sorted
Okay. Good enough.
handout,
Stack one at a
which I've copied from the commissioner request spreadsheet and highlighted the things that at the present I feel are most important, that I feel that I'm getting some feedback from John about. This is like 2 years of stuff, so.
Yeah.
Again, some of
And
it
it's-
is closed, and it's been
Well,
good
and
stuff, and
some
there's
of
been
it's-
good things that come out of it, so.
Right. And I think it's always useful to bring it up for a refresh, to see if any of these items comes up to the board level of interest.
Yes, and we will talk through the green ones because it's late, and then we can also talk through alternative paths to get this information.
Well, I'd like to actually go the other way, because I did invite everyone to take a look at this on Diligent.
Okay, great.
And I'd like to see, if we go around the circle, if anyone has any item they would like to discuss, since it's late and it's a big agenda, and if anyone has anything they would like to discuss. So, because I think everyone was invited to look at this way before this weekend, and so they've had time.
Months.
Well, we've had, yeah, some of us have looked at it pretty much every time it gets updated. So, Eric, is there anything that jumps out? Do you mind if I start with you?
That's fine,
Because
no,
you and I
there's
have been
nothing.
looking at it for the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing from Eric. Jeff, is there anything that jumps out at you that deserves consideration of the board at this time?
My only slight comment is the policy manual update. Can we consider that completed at this point? Or are you referring to something else besides the exercise that was just gone through?
In 2022, we suspended revision of the board policy manual because we were so focused on Elder Centennial. There are a number of issues and things that, remain open in the board policy manual, and we have not updated currently. I feel that that's something that when we go toward accreditation, we will say we do not have an updated policy manual, and we will have to do it.
Right. But I think each of the staff members is working through pieces, and we have seen policy revisions come forward, certainly from Beth Dostard. We've
That's the
seen,
personnel policy manual, not the
Yes.
board policy manual.
no, but I mean, fair enough. That shapes the policy that the board will adopt.
So I guess that deserves clarification, which policy are you?
Board
It's the-
policy.
it's,
Board
Okay,
policy.
all right, so we probably want to update that here.
So that's one item from James, from Jeff. James Hemmings, do you have anything on this list that jumps out to you as being worthy of group board attention that doesn't look like it would bring itself forward in the ordinary course?
At some point in time, when the new executive director is here, I would like to talk about the website. There are a couple items here that relate to the website, several items actually that we posted. And I think we need, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Nassau's coming in, she has to have an opportunity to be, I think it's important that she's part of that discussion, particularly since it's so public facing. It'd be nice to have her in there and also have her with respect to these issues. So I think we should talk about them just when she's here.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Colleen?
Well, two items, one being with Mr. Peterson's departure, I want to make sure that our FOIA log is up to date so that, we don't have any gaps or are missing anything. And then, as I understand, the Village of Winnetka has a study session on the steep slope ordinance on January 2nd. It is further my understanding that between 2016 and 2019, the Lakota group, working with staff, Costa, you can help me with this, did a final bluff plan for each of our 5 beachfront parks. And I would think that that would be very pertinent to to have available, the final report available that we could give the Village of Winnetka so that they would have it as they look at the steep slope ordinance. Today,
Those are pretty
I-
separate.
Again, I think it would be helpful to have. To date, I've not been able to secure the final bluff land restoration plan.
So that's one vote for bluff restoration, that's one vote for wait for Shannon Nazal to arrive. Go ahead, Cynthia.
I think though there's a distinction between requests for information for documents that we should have available and then projects that require staff time to execute. So like the website requires staff time to execute.
Finding all the documents requires staff time to execute.
Finding all the documents, I mean, we're a public entity, they should be available.
This is a small agency. It's a very small agency. We've had enormous staff turnover. It's a practical reality. We've had enormous staff turnover on the administrative side of the people who are directly responsible for these functions, directly as a function of these requests.
So over
People
15
have
months
said,
later.
I am micromanaged. I quit. That's it. I don't know how to answer these requests when we keep losing people because of these requests. That's the hard part. So that is, I think, a challenge going forward for, I mean, obviously you have your highlighted ones in green that you'd like us to bring forward to the board.
Yes, I would. I guess for some of these, have an objection to this process. When Peter Murphy came in September, he talked about our commissioners, he gave us a packet, and one of the questions in one of the slides was, are commissioners entitled to review documents related to the agency without making a FOIA request? And, there's continuing developing law, blah, blah, blah. But if you're not receiving relevant information, you are able to make a FOIA request. I feel like getting these bluff plans should not be objectionable. We should have them. We received a grant for them.
I don't think it's objectionable. I think it's a question of staffing. And I think it's been a question of staffing for the last 2 years. And it's unfortunate, but it is a practical reality.
No comment.
Okay. Okay, so we have one item. Does anyone believe that the policy manual should be a conversation? Does anyone believe that we should wait for Shannon? I'd like a show of hands, policy manual. First, I'd like to start with table this until Shannon Nazal arrives. Can I have a show of hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 5 is table this list until Shannon Nazal arrives, okay?
I reserve my right to FOIA request the documents that I want. John Peterson, earlier in the week, I asked to see some of the work product from Mr. Kehoe, and he told me no.
Can
And
I comment on?
I am not okay with being told a hard no for documents that are public.
So can I respond on both the
Yes,
commissioner list
yes,
and the?
please.
So first on the commissioner request list, which is heavily dominated by 2 commissioners. The staff is limited. I mean, the number of things that are going on within this organization that nobody sees behind the curtain is amazing, how much is going on. So we prioritize and pay attention to matters and projects discussed in board meetings and deemed to be a priority by a majority of the board. I do not track the spreadsheet or its requests because we have to pay attention to the projects that we've been asked to do by a majority of the board. I think any of these listed items should be discussed with all commissioners during the forthcoming board meetings. Those items you believe to be closed out or open. And for any matters or projects you want to move forward with, secure a majority of the board's support for the matter the board would like staff to prioritize. Identify what matter in the project the staff currently is working on that needs to be set aside and replaced by the newly identified project. Identify additional staff or third-party service firms required to address the matter of the project and the cost associated with that, and provide a realistic timeline to address the matter in the project in the context of all that's going on. So the number of emails I get from you, Commissioner Rapp, in a given day, let alone a given week, is remarkable. It's a lot. And you're asking for things at a spot moment without any context of what Coast is doing, or what I'm doing, or any of the other staff members are doing, that take time of themselves. You want us to work on the policy manual? We're happy to drop Elder Centennial or whatever else you want us to drop. We can't add that to we only have so much time. So you continue to ask for time-consuming elements. I'm respectful of the bluff information that Costa will have, what have you, but there are so many things going on, let alone the FOIA requests. So last Thursday, right, all this was brought up as within the context of a marketing representative. We had one. We onboarded one Monday of this week. The last Thursday, sorry, 2 Thursdays ago, you asked for information. After that, we have staff that are out because of health matters. We have all sorts of elements going on within the Park District that are Winter Carnival oriented, FOIA responses, the list goes on. And yet, for us to then turn around and come up with a way to bring staff time and resources to address a 33-item list, we don't have it. So you tell us which one of these, the board tells the staff which one of these you want, and which thing we're working on, you want to take off the list, because we cannot do it all. You're asking us to do it all, but we cannot. So that's my response to this list.
So I just want to go back, because this list was generated in response to a request from the executive director.
Yeah.
Because you were upset
For a
that I
reason.
went to the village to get information on my own.
Yeah. It worked-
And so I
worked like a charm.
responded by putting together this stuff because you were upset about that.
It worked.
So I'm,
Okay, you guys tell us which 33 you want us to focus on, and which 33 you want us to take away. So that's, I'll leave it at that.
So,
but I'm just saying, the bluff plan, it's been asked for 18 months. In 18 months, we could not find a document that was produced, that we did public engagement on. Like, it's baffling.
We received grant money for it.
I-
And we represented, had been finalized and complete.
It was referenced in the May 25th resolution, and we can't see it? Really?
Okay,
So-
Commissioner Cotto
I
was
would-
talking about tiered plans for the beaches for Lloyd that we will not do. Where are those tiered plans?
if we're not gonna do them, I would argue that they're not really a priority. So here's how this, I just wanna say 2 more things, and then we're going to move beyond this. Those 2 things are, the most urgent things get onto the agenda. Okay, so the most urgent things that we need to address, the business of providing policy direction and running the agency and funding the agency and making sure our bills get paid, those things have to go on the agenda. These things are important things, but we do not have the staff. And sadly, one of the reasons, so we have the agenda for the critical items, we have the job of every single staff member that cranks away for events and reporting and support, and then we have these. And if these items are not rising to the top of the board's list, it's a reality. It's right now that they are not rising to the top of the board's list. It's not forever, and the board, I have encouraged each commissioner to look at this list. And at such a point as when those items do rise to the collective angst of the board, they will be considered on the agenda. They will be
Okay,
placed
but I am
on the
not
agenda.
checking my right to do a freedom of information request for information that I deem is important. And
And
that is my right. And you are not going to
yes.
block me to do that by going through this process. You are not going to block me. I am not going to be told that I cannot see public documents. Like, I'm not.
Cynthia, there's urgent, there's important, there's not urgent, there's not important. We put each of these items into those quadrants, and we may never get to the not urgent, not important. Those functions can be attended to when we get the Elder Centennial matter off of our plate. When we stop grinding, we're in 3 hours and 40 minutes. Last time was a 5-hour board meeting. These these meetings take a toll on staff. The requests take a toll on staff. Staff's turned over because we continue to grind in the same thing. That goes back to my earlier comment about respecting when motions are made and passed, we move forward. We don't relitigate. Instead, we continue to relitigate. When you file a FOIA request, when citizens file a FOIA request, they sap staff time to respond to those FOIA requests, and we could never get to this if we continue to say, pound on the table, say, I want you to pay attention to me now. No, that's the purpose of having this board. We prioritize and give this limited staff resources. We tell them what to do. So you want to jump up and down and file a FOIA request? Sure, that's your right. But I don't think that's in keeping with the practice of
Great.
a respectful board member.
Then I would be grateful, because I see 4 people sitting around this table who were on the board when that bluff plan was done. I would be grateful for one of you to email it to me.
Okay, by a vote of 5-2, we have a motion to wait until Shannon Nazal, our new executive director, arrives to consider the commissioner request spreadsheet. Moving on to item 9.1, new business, the consideration of approval of IAPD annual meeting delegates. May I have a motion to approve Jeff Tyson as delegate, Shannon Nazal as delegate, Jeff Tyson as first alternate, and John Peterson as second alternate for the IAPD annual meeting on January 27th, Saturday, January 27th, 2024, correct.
So
May I have a motion?
Second.
Second. Do we need discussion?
Are all those people attending?
They are able to attend, they are willing to attend.
Okay, does
Yes.
the date for the conference span John's departure day? Will we
Only
look
if I'm
into that?
required as a delegate.
Yes.
Okay,
Only if he's required, yes. And Shannon is actually going to be in town, so.
amazing.
No other discussion? Can we vote? Oh, sorry,
When is Shannon's official first day?
February 1st.
Right, the
So,
conference is
yes.
25th to the 28th, the meeting's on the 28th. I don't know if that's an issue.
I've talked with
Part of our
IAPD.
consulting agreement.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that, but we have already talked to Peter Anselman. Thank you very much. We love Jason, also Peter. Thank you very much, Costa, because that's a good catch, and it's always good to have someone doing a check and balance. So, may I have a vote, roll call vote, Denise?
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lesson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmings?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Koto?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you. Staff reports, Kate Erickson, you are first.
I am pleased to announce that we have a new team member on the marketing team. Skylar Greenberg started with us this week. She's our graphic design and media specialist. She comes from Deerfield Park District. So she's hit the ground running this week. We're thrilled to have her. She is just dove right into the spring brochure. So really excited to be kind of getting that underway. We're tweaking things as we go and coming up with some new policy and procedures about how the process is going to work. But she's really kind of hitting the ground running with that, so that's really great. Along with some other projects from the rec team, like Letters for Santa, which you'd be surprised at how many letters we get. It's fairly amazing, like 300 some. So we're, it's a long process with getting those all ready for everyone. We're working on promoting winter programs pretty heavily right now. That all begins the beginning of January, so right now there's a big push in marketing, just with different e-blasts, a social media strategy that we're currently putting together, and working with the staff on working on the brochure content, along with lakefront updates along with Costa, which is a big priority and a big undertaking as well. So A lot going on. Along with on the website note, we are migrating to, for our website to be on a new hosting provider, which is called Kinsta. It's really going to speed up our website. I know that's a big struggle for everyone, or it's fairly slow. So this is really going to kind of speed up how fast people can get to our programs. Searchability, it's really gonna help with that, and plugins and updates. So some of the struggles that we're seeing just in things being able to load, having so much information on our website really kind of weighs it down. So this Kinsta is a big project, and it's really gonna help things. Doing a lot with the rec team too, with holiday events, a lot of promoting, and handling at the events, photography, video, and just really kind of trying to get out there and get some good content for future marketing opportunities. So really busy over there in the little marketing department.
Congratulations on your new hire.
Yeah, I think she's gonna be great. I'm really excited.
Like met her?
She's- Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
she's
glad
great.
she jumped right in. That's
Yeah,
helpful
she
for
really
you.
is, so.
Good. Jim Crocker's no longer here. Looking around the room. Elisa?
I just wanted to highlight that this Saturday is our final holiday event, our Winter Express drive-in movie out in the parking lot out here. So we've had holiday events every weekend in December. So this will wrap up our holiday events. Ice and tennis and rec general programs are just up and running very well. And Kate mentioned that we are working on the spring brochure. So as we are in the middle of winter, spring brochure is being created, which actually includes all summer camps. So it is difficult to plan June, July, and August when we haven't even hit our holiday season yet, but that is all in the works. So lots of meetings and plans to discuss all of those options for summer, and that will come out in the next brochure. And staff has already reached out and is starting summer hiring and interviews while the potential new hires are home for a winter break. So summer is here.
Thank you. Costa.
Christina, thank you. Currently, myself and Superintendent of Parks, Greg Fields, are working with the Village of Winnetka as it relates to stormwater for Core Island. As you've seen with the work that's been progressing, with the current contract with Berger and the village has been working on down Hayward Road, the continued conveyance is phase 2 and phase 3 now implementation are ongoing. The village is going to be going out soon for bids as it relates to that project. Staff has had a chance to review those plans, is comfortable with what we've seen thus far, and meets the objectives as outlined in the IGA, and have met the checkpoints through the IGA as well. Our current revision of the plans, we did have a few things that we noted. We did have a site meeting on site with the engineering team and James Bernal to walk through those concerns. All of those were addressed and are being noted on the plans, so we're going to continue moving forward with that. Staff will give their approval of that moving forward in January. That's part of the process through the IGA, and we'll continue on moving forward with that process as it relates to Core Island and the stormwater work for the next part of the conveyance. In addition to that, staff has been working with engineering firms on other fronts as well. Due diligence as it relates to irrigation projects that have been budgeted and delayed, and we're going to be moving forward with, hopefully, now that the budget's been passed. For Nick Corwin Field irrigation for ASYO soccer to help bring those fields up to a better standard, especially with natural turf. So that's something we're looking forward to, as well as Little Duke and what's considered there. So we're excited to be moving forward on those fronts. We're doing preliminary engineering design work for those sets of plans, go out to bid, along with extensive RFPs as it relates to other items in the agency. We're looking to do a lot of forestry work. In the budget, you might have noticed there's a lot of items accounted for contracted services, whether it be at Core Island, whether it be at Bell Woods, whether it be the lakefront with Tower, Maple, and Lloyd. So we're going to be looking to put an RFP out to make sure we select the best candidate for that work and meet coming under the bid regulations for that, because the totals for those projects are going to creep beyond what our thresholds are. In addition to that, we've also been working with 2010 Engineering as it relates to the design for the cart barn and the infrastructure needed to support that endeavor for the golf course fleet of lithium-ion carts. So we're finalizing those plans now, where staff will review with village staff to better understand what revisions, if any, are going to be needed, especially around fire code and fire suppression. Had some early conversations with Chief Ripka and Inspector Fromm as well, so we're pretty comfortable with what's been proposed thus far, but nothing has been finalized until they see the plan sets and they're formally submitted for their review. They can't really make any kind of final decisions, of course, until they understand what they're looking at, but it's been progressing well and positive in that approach. Staff has been working to support Kemper Sports as it relates to improvements over at the golf clubhouse, as well as other facilities throughout the area. And we went through and checked all the ceiling tiles in this room as well. Issue would not happen again. So everybody's in the safe zone, if you will. But other things are ongoing, of course. Snow removal, switching equipment over for that facet, supporting where we can other entities throughout the community, and just continuing on to maintain our parks.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
With respect to the plans for Crow Island Woods, have the limits of the conveyance area and storage area changed at all from the approved IGA?
They've stayed within the confines of the approved IGA.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And yes, Denise.
I don't have anything.
Did I skip you? I started with Kate. Yeah,
I have nothing additional tonight.
Okay, all right. And then John, the wisdom of having you be the last speaker on staff reports is also that you are matters of director.
Yep, so 3 items. So Kate, Denise and I are putting the structure together for the Platform Tennis Celebration event, which is January 19th. So we have a meeting next week on that particular topic. And I think Elisa underscored or did not highlight the complexity of the summer camp process. There is a whole heck of a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes that Elisa's being the champion of, because we're going to have some limited space, courtesy of all the projects that D36 is running through. So Elisa's put forward a lot of effort to meet with different potential resources for space, but it's going to be really complex. So I just wanted to make sure you receive props for the work you're doing to try and solve a pretty difficult equation. The Elder Centennial Project, the total cost year to date, with one invoice still to be reviewed for Red Barn Design and Engineering, and I know Commissioner Rapp is reviewing that particular invoice that just came in recently, and she's working to get more insight from Costa Catullus. So I'm including that invoice in this figure, which is $694,653.58 year to date. The invoice in and of itself from Red Barn is $248,175, and I think Commissioner Rapp asked some great questions earlier today. Costa's worked on responses specific to that invoice, and I think more to come tomorrow. If
I
read
think
it
you
correctly.
dropped them off.
Yeah, I emailed back to Jim, and he forwarded that email on to you, and I left you a copy
There's
of
a
the
packet
final
right there.
report as well.
Yeah, no. So that packet was worth like $6,000, just to put it in the context of the totality of the invoice.
Okay, yeah.
Like just for.
Okay, thought it might have been the whole thing, sorry.
No, I'm just so working.
The legal expenses, bear with me a second. Year to date are now, we received a Ansel Blink invoice as well as a Robin Schwartz invoice, minimal as it is. There was some work that was required for the Treeshine matter where Robin Schwartz was inadvertently included in some of the communications on the Treeshine matter, as well as some just general Park District matters on pushing back on tax rate objector services or tax rate objectors. But right now we're at $157,275.28. We have some small invoices that are being reviewed with Littler for employment matters, but I think they're in the $3,000 range, but those have yet to be resubmitted to the Park District right now, $157,275. I was asked by a commissioner, primarily by Commissioner Cotto, where we stand on our expenses since withdrawing the joint application for Elder Centennial. And so I calculated pretty thoroughly, we have $833,807.31 in hard costs since for Elder Centennial. We have, bear with me here. That was hard costs, which was the legal fees and related items.
Soft cost.
Well, so it should be soft costs, right? We also have monies that were spent in July through December of 2022, as well as in 2023 for legal costs. The total ends up coming to, and I've then made a conservative estimate of employee costs, because no one really sees the time and expense going into all the employee work. And so just making a very basic swag on time spent in board meetings, time spent in public meetings, invoice reviews, RFQ process, litigation, FOIAs, work with attorneys and other third-party service providers, hiring of new employees due to attrition and beyond. The soft cost I estimated to be a very conservatively low $250,000, but since that date in 2022, $1,083,807.31 since withdrawing the joint application.
Thank you, that's helpful. Some of it is FOIA in there,
Yeah.
and some of it is iterative design work. Some of it is legal fees for answering conflict of interests and working with different lawsuits and, so.
I tried to work to take out FOIAs that were not specific to Elder Centennial or related matters, because there have been some that are not specific.
Got it, okay.
So,
Perfect. Thank you, John, that's helpful. Number 50.
Just a question on
Yeah.
that. Related to the FOIAs, I know it did not make our top list, but as a practical matter, like, the information that's, for example, housed at Robert Schwartz, do we have that information in-house?
we actually have, I believe everything that Robin Schwartz did with us or for us, that they did, is on Diligent Community.
But it's not accessible because it puts you to the Dropbox equivalent for Robin Schwartz.
Oh, so thank you for giving me
So-
the heads up, so I need to make that.
So we need to make sure that we
Rewiring.
actually have, like, the data from those FOIAs in-house, I think.
Not just a link.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, not just a link that
Yeah.
doesn't work.
I think
Yeah.
flash drives would be one way to get at it, right?
Yeah. Board liaison reports? Eric?
I have none.
Excellent. Jeff?
Nope.
Okay. James? Yeah, okay. Colleen?
You remove me as liaison. I have no report.
No report.
Lauren?
Oh, wait, hold on. I did have a question though that has not been addressed through the meeting.
Yes.
Or in an email, for Adam, for, the D36 property transaction, has that closed?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
It took a little longer than it should, but that was partly because of the hack that Chicago Title suffered. But it is fully closed,
Okay.
it is fully over.
Okay. We had the village leaders meeting at New Trier on Wednesday morning. Keith Dronin hosted us all at New Trier, gave us a tour, talked about their individualized education program for each student, not just for students in need of special education, which I thought was very helpful. Then they talked about the center of the building that they will also be progressively restoring and fixing. And then there's a big Go Green initiative over at New Trier with regard to solar panels, because they have quite a few at New Trier West, and they're hoping to implement them because they've just put on new roofs at New Trier East. So it's a good time to install solar panels. The village is chugging along with the post office relocation. I'm not sure if it's public, but the post office has chosen a new location in Winnetka, so that's very exciting. The schools are working to help educate the public with regard to the metrics that are used to describe why Winnetka schools are not absolute number one, why they're in the 99th percentile, but what the other metrics are. Some of the metrics might be, and the biggest drag for Winnetka is attendance. Okay, just across the board, attendance pulls down your ranking more than anything else. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Okay. Remarks from visitors. Second session of remarks from visitors. Your opportunity to address the board on any issue. When called upon, come to the center position in front of the commissioners. State your name for the record and speak directly to the board. Per the Winnetka Park District's policy manual, as well as the Open Meetings Act in the state of Illinois, Attorney General Public Access Counselor's Office, 2011, PAC 17-388. Please keep all comments less than 3 minutes. It's not a question and answer forum, so please do not expect a response or an answer from the park board this evening. If you prefer to share your comments in writing, you may use the comment cards which are available near the sign-in sheets. Any Park District staff will accept your card to be shared with the board. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? Susie, please come forward.
Let the record note that we have 2 members of the public now present.
Indeed, a 100% increase.
Behind me is Mary Garrison. Susie Schreiber, Winnetka Park District resident. I have 3 points. One, you were discussing your representatives to the joint conference APD, IPRA meeting in early 2024, and I would just remind you that you were appointing IAPD, Illinois Association of Park Districts. That's generally your elected commissioners, and that generally around the state is those people that attend that and work on that, and IPRA staff is affiliated with that. But it is a joint conference, and I've been on the joint conference committee, and there's members of both on it. But just keep in mind that your commissioners should be going to IAPD things and be your representative. The second point is Centennial. You were referencing conditions when you have OSLED money or similar type grant money, and remember that even on your signage it indicates that there was OSLED money put into both Centennial and an Elder. So keep that in mind. And then I was just a teensy-weensy bit offended on behalf of the children of this community when I came into this meeting tonight, because there was a lovely Santa's mailbox which seems to move, and even at Home Alone it was located where it's generally located. But it's Santa's mailbox. It shouldn't have a marketing byline on it. This is one thing. It's kind of like the Easter egg hunt. The Easter Bunny and Santa don't need to have marketing names smeared all over them, in this past commissioner's opinion. But thank you very much, and have a really nice holiday, each and every one of you.
Thanks, Susie. Mary, did you want to say anything?
Well, I had a very nice dinner. Look at you.
Mary, we're hungry.
I will just say this has been the easiest park meeting I've attended in a long time. Full of Pomeroy in the meantime. Just want to thank you for all the work. It's been tremendous. I don't know exactly where this is going to end up, but I just thank you for your time, because I know what it's like to sit on the other side of the board. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Do we have items for closed? Okay. May I have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS section 5 ILCS 120 section 2C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, and 5 ILCS 120/section 2C5 for the purchase or lease of property 5 ILCS 120/2C6 for the setting of a price for sale or lease of property, and 5 ILCS 120/2C11 for litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, and 5 ILCS 120/2C21 for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 206.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Excellent. Any discussion? Denise, that's a roll call?
Alrighty, Commissioner Hemmings,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Root.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Koto.
Yes.
That motion passes.
It's 10:07. Okay. So we do not anticipate taking any action.
Well,
Do we?
we
Whoa.
anticipate
We
taking
do?
action.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we do,
Okay.
potentially.